was an issue I explored further with the award-winning peace activist Charles Danguy when I visited him in Schumann's old constituency at Thionville, near Metz. If I was looking for a borderman's perspective on the historical development of European Federation, he would certainly be able to give it, having spent over a half-century facilitating open-hearted dialogue in the Strasbourg Parliament and out on the front lines of industrial and cultural conflict.
Charles, I want to thank you for having me in your flat here in Jutz.
We didn't open in German.
Under the occupation.
Because we have been German here.
Yeah.
It's a German part of Lorraine.
And you are a Lorrainer?
No, I am not. I was born in Switzerland from a French and Swiss parents. And I've got my father's family, my grandmother on my father's side was from Germany. So I'm a kind of a mixture between three identities.
You are a homme de frontier.
And I grew up in Switzerland and only came to France when I had my military service. When I was 20 years old, 22.
What year was that?
54.
1954, okay.
And after my military service, actually I met Initiative of Change before in 51. Went up to Co.
Yes. Invited
by a friend. I did not know anything about Initiative of Change, and I discovered it by working in the travel office. At the time we had a travel office to go, because there was no computers and no iPhone. And I said after a while, I said, this is very nice, but does it work if you are not in a civil life? So I said I will take my military period as a test of these ideas. So this is what I did. And it was a rather good test. And then I went back to work in Switzerland to sell watches. And then my job fell apart and I had a choice. And I felt called to serve Initiative of Change for the rest of my life. It was in 57.
This was before Andrew arrived, yeah.
And before Andrew, I met him when we arrived here in Lorraine, 67 with my wife.
Yes.
In between, I stayed in America, in Canada, did different things, interesting. And I got married with the girl who is a daughter for Mrs. Law, Irene Law.
Oh, you married her daughter, right?
Yeah.
So for those of you who are, Irene Law was the remarkable story of a communist resistance fight.
Not communist, a socialist.
A socialist. John, would you like to just quick, because it's your mother-in-law?
She's a woman who was a nurse in life, but she had a passion for the social life. And she was, like her husband, they were both convinced socialists. And so she worked, and she was, during the war, she was a resistance fighter. And the family knew very well what she was doing or not doing. And then after the war, she was elected in the first house of the French Parliament. And there was a large hope at the time from the woman that they could play a part.
Yes.
And one of her best friends as an MP was a lady from Marseille who was not at all from the same political side. But my mother-in-law was a little disappointed of what women could do.
Yeah.
And she did not run for a further former. And this is about the time she met Initiative of Change and found her destiny to help people to get reconciled.
I have seen a very moving documentary about her
you,
life.
You saw it. So.
Yeah, and that this is one scene on the terrace where we have been, where she has this conversation with a German woman whose husband was killed in the war.
Yeah.
And there's this moment of reconciliation, in the particular, which then of course becomes part of her whole story.
Yeah, she went on, and my father-in-law was also came to Co, and he was also a militant, but as he was a sailor, he was absent from home many times. But he was a remarkable man also. So then I happened to get married in '67, and we were asked to come here and to prepare the arrival of a show, musical show, produced in Co about Europe.
Yeah.
So with my wife, we arrived here and we spent our time finding beds in families. We had the support of the city hall of 3 of them, cities. And at the end of these 10 days, one of our hosts said, well, you come and go, who will be staying? And after a number of weeks of reflection with my wife, who wanted to go back to the western part of France, he said, okay, we stay. So we established, we had our first flat in March 1968. So this is the way we became Lorrain.
Yeah.
And it happened in this region. There was a friend of mine in Luxembourg, Bernard Zamaron, who was working for the Commission. And he started to open up my mind to the European institutions, because I knew nothing before that. And then there was another man who was an Englishman, who used to come once a year to a session in Strasbourg. And he used after that to come home and stay. And he said to me, you must come to Strasbourg. I did not know much about it, but as I participated in Luxembourg to some private discussions on the future of the Lomé Conventions, I discovered that the MEPs, members of the European Parliament, I met then, were interesting personalities. And I decided to go and see how they work. So I went to Strasbourg. At the time it was very easy to get into the place. It was late 70s. And I went to listen. I studied, well, how do they work? Who are they? And I told the 2 people I knew. And I got fascinated. So I decided later on that I would take at heart to care for these European members of Parliament and go regularly to the sessions and try to make links between the civil society and these people.
Good.
So since 1984, I do that every month. And I had amazing experiences because we tried, a friend of mine, Michel Keckler, who lives in Strasbourg, to create links between friends of ours from France or other parts of the world who wanted to speak with MEPs. So we had a lot of private initiatives.
Yes.
And we are recognized, and ROC France is part of the official, we are recognized officially by the European Union.
Yeah.
I've got no power, but I can go in and out whenever I want. So just lately in June this year, we had some young people in our office in Paris who wanted to discover initiative of change. So we arranged with an MEP from Metz for these people to come for one day. It's too short, but anyway, they came for one day. And we arranged 2 or 3 meetings with the MEPs. And I could talk with them. It changed completely the relationship between the person and the institution.
Yes.
Because we don't speak about the European MPs the right way in France. We don't. We always speak of those who are negative.
Yeah.
But I've met tremendous MEPs in my life with whom I did some work. I met a lady from Germany, next door here. And she's a woman who has dedicated 25 years of her life for the peace in the Balkans. And I used to meet her frequently. And you see how we met her was that one day my wife was coming with me to the European Parliament, that time was possible. And we were sitting in the plenary, and France was attacked. So suddenly this lady, German lady, stood up and said, no, we're not doing the right thing. And she started to defend France. So my wife said, we must go and meet her. So we went up to the office, and she entered the house and said, thank you, madame. And then from that day, we are friends. So it was basically based on personal relationship, not try to promote anything, but to promote a relationship between people. So I had fascinating experiences. I don't know why, but anyway, I was linked with relationship. One day, one MEP said to us, we got to know him, and he said, anyway, one friend from Lebanon said, what can we do to meet again the European Parliament? So can you help us? So a friend of mine who went to a session in Strasbourg spoke about it. And a few weeks later, a group of 4 European MPs, 4 MPs from Lebanon came to Strasbourg. And it was the first delegation since many, many years.
Yeah.
I don't know what they talked about, probably. We're not included into this session.
No.
But we had this kind of a meeting of
Yeah.
people. And this has been basically our work.
Real work.
Besides that, I've been involved with a farmers' dialogue. Many years ago, I got interested in the farmers' world. And I thought that it might be good to create links between the industrial society and the farmers.
Mm.
So I was in the western part of France at the time, and I started to go and meet the farmers to find out what they are doing. I knew nothing about farming. So I went up to the door, said, I'm so-and-so, and a friend of so-and-so. And we slowly developed a work where we had exchanges between foreigners and French farmers.
Mm.
And today this farmers' dialogue has a world, is actually in many countries, developing through initiatives locally.
Yeah.
It is that what somebody said, it was doing,
Yeah.
individuals who do that.
So you have acted as an intermediary, and this
Yeah.
was under the auspices of Initiatives of Change.
Yeah, I mean, initiative of change, it is what I am. And so I gave all my life for that initiative of change.
And you were telling me earlier about Zichasel and the preservation of Schumann's and the developing of that.
Yeah, because when I arrived in Lorraine in '67, it was soon after the death of Schumann, there was no real plan because those who inherited in the Schumann's family, they picked up everything. And it went, the books went away, everything was. But in 1978, we decided to have a meeting of German families with German, French, and French families in Zichasel.
Yeah.
And it was, of course, we could use the kitchen, and there was not much. It was still in a state. It was left by Robert Schumann.
Yeah.
But in 1976, after the signing of the Lomé Convention, my friend from Luxembourg had a thought, because he was committed to Javier, we must create a place where the MEPs and the delegates from the Lomé Convention meet unofficially.
Mm.
So he launched this idea, and he said, can the Initiative of Change team help us to prepare the meal? Because it was a kind of cold dinner to be served.
Yeah.
But it was still in the old buildings. You had a staircase are there to go up to the first floor for the meeting room. And 100 people came from Luxembourg. And they started a dialogue. And we expected it would take an hour and a half, but it took 3 hours. And at the end of it, a civil servant said to my friend, I never heard the Africans speaking so freely.
Oh.
Of course, we served the dinner afterwards.
Yeah.
But it was an experience for me to help me to be trained in this world which I did not know at all. And my friend from Luxembourg, Bernard Samaron, always tried to make a link when we did different things together. Now he's retired, but he's not very well physically, otherwise I would have taken it to him because he knew Robert Schumann.
Yeah.
And when he was a young man, he asked Robert Schumann, in which political party should I be? And Schumann said, well, choose the one you want. So anyway, this is what I am, speaking badly English, but I've been many, many times in Britain. After I went to Code 51, I went for many months in Britain. So I learned well your country.
Yes.
And I've had many work with farmers in Britain, with dockers, and other people.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to go up to Glasgow, to Edinburgh,
Yeah.
and I still have some friends in that part of the world.
Yeah. And we were at the Strasbourg yesterday at the outside the Parliament, and we were thinking soberly as we see the British flag flying, perhaps for the last few weeks over the at the end of the line of flags.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about the Brexit? And
Well, I can give you an article which I wrote when there was a referendum.
yes,
And I wrote an article which I can give to you,
thank you.
and our European grandfather. This is what it is. And you see, we would not have the Europe of today if Churchill had not put his foot down.
Mm.
Because many of his, maybe even his colleagues were very weak on Hitler. And this, in France, de Gaulle had the same attitude. And this actually created the link between these two men. They did not understand each other, but they knew what they were fighting for.
Yeah.
And I think they are the ones who helped the victory, like many others, which allowed the sons, Schumann and company, to do what they have been doing. And I ask the question, what would the grandsons do?
Ah, I see. Yes, very good. And so what will we do with our legacy?
Yeah, with a legacy, because I do feel that Churchill firmness on this situation, which the Americans were out of the game, the French were like that, in Britain also, and I'd seen a program on TV about it. So I decided to write this article, and a friend of mine said, well, it's come too late, but it's a good article.
Well, I shall.
So I can leave it to you.
Yeah,
to
thank
help
you.
How I try to get involved into the Brexit situation. That's
Yes.
judging.
It is. Well, it is happening now, so we can't
No,
change. But
this was before the referendum.
yeah. But I'm saying now we shall just move forward. Well, that is extraordinary. So we come from the town, very near the town of Keswick in Cumbria, where Frank Bookman had his Damascus Road, his meeting with God in the little chapel. It is next to the supermarket. I know the one. It is 10 minutes from my house, and so that is. We have come all the way from there to Switzerland, and we've followed the lives of 4 or 5 men who changed history, in their own way, which is a very extraordinary thought. That I think Schumann put it one way. He said, "We are imperfect instruments of providence." It is yes, we all do our own. You've been doing the best that God calls us to. I think it is. It's been lovely to talk to you, Charles. Is there anything else you'd like to?
Well, just our association, Initiative of Change in Lorraine, as one of its aims is to build the links between the European people.
Yes.
But then one day, one of the European MP who spoke to me, she said, "You must go and speak to the school about what you feel about Europe."
Yeah.
So we decided to write this, to make a video, which I haven't got the English version written, but I can give you the English version, which is the idea of Europe across the continents, across centuries. It's interesting to see and to read.
Yes.
So with Fabrice, we spent a year finding the facts of life.
Yeah.
And it describes how this idea of for Europe has been going on through the ages.
Yes.
And finally arrive on this amazing time after the Second World War.
Yeah.
When we had so I'm afraid I haven't got I can send you to you the text of this, and you can then read it on the computer.
Thank you.
I think it has nothing to do directly with Schumann, but it is linked with.
Oh yes, it is. Yes, I have a chapter in the book that I have written for this series called "The Europeanization of Europe." Talks about how, through the Middle Ages onwards, from the minting of silver coins, to the chancery to the laws, religion, the monastic revolution, the Crusades even started to form a European identity which is distinct. Some things were good, some things not so good. But the culmination seems to be, 1951, where it becomes possible, suddenly becomes possible to think maybe we could, a supranational organization to do what was not possible 20 years before.
It is an amazing story.
Yeah.
And somebody asked, why did he succeed?
Mm.
And the answer is that Schuman trusted Monet, and Monet trusted Schuman. And of course, there's both together trust each other. They could trust Adenauer and the others.
Mm.
It's a question of trust which we haven't got today anymore, I'm afraid. And this is why we have difficulty to move forward, because everybody is trying to fight for his own little circle.
Yeah.
And we have lost the vision of what Europe could do for the world peace.
One of the questions that I find hard to answer because I am English, but because I am young and I have not had time to read. But you have you said that when you went to the European Parliament, you knew nothing. You were like I am now. One of the questions I ask is the warnings that Schuman gave about Europe and Adenauer, has the European Union achieved what they wanted? Yes, we have peace. Or has it got serious problems that people should be thinking about?
I think somebody said to me that the Coal and Steel Treaty was rather easy to make because the 6 countries had more or less the same culture. Coal, steel, and 3 of these men were Christian Democrats.
Yeah, that's right.
It is a help. Although Spark participated, and Monet was actually inspired by, the one who inspired, who got the idea. And this person told me that as soon as we started to get other countries in Europe involved, the spirit changed.
Mm.
And I must say that I was in the European Parliament when we had a debate on the enlargement after the Fall War.
Yes.
And I listened to all the main debates. There was 3 main debates. It was fascinating. 3 hours in the chair to listen to it. And true enough, all these countries wanted to be part of the European Union. They all agreed with the values of the European Union. And of course, at the end, all of them voted for the entry, because the Commission could say something about European Parliament. At the end of that day, I said to myself, Yalta is finished. We close the door on Yalta. But I think what has been missing, and this is what is coming up now in different ideas, is that we did not go deep enough into the culture. And we took for granted that it will go easily by commercial exchanges. We'll get to know each other, but we don't.
Yeah.
We don't. When I was in Poland in '78 for a farmers' dialogue, it was 77, 90. Or later, it was 98 or 90. A Polish farmer said to me, we don't want to exchange Moscow dictatorship to the Brussels dictate.
Yeah.
This shows that somewhere we have not created the spirit where these countries find themselves at home. We find ourselves at home, especially here, because we're part of those satellites. It's very difficult, very much difficult to feel at home in something which is already running. And when you are in the eastern part of Poland,
yes,
and you speak of Brussels,
yes,
where is it?
Yes.
And when I was there on the Ukrainian border years ago, at midnight one day, and I said, my gosh, the center of Europe is not in Brussels. And I think we're mixed because we're institutions.
Yes.
We thought that we were the center of Europe, but actually the center of Europe is Prague.
Yeah.
And now there is an attempt. When we had this opening, I said to some people in the European Parliament, I said, we should create an outfit like the traité de l'Élysée, the Élysée Treaty between Adenauer and de Gaulle, which actually opened up the door for over 7 million young people from France to meet together, and then have an exchange between cities. So Germans came to France, stayed in homes. It has been the welding part.
Yes, I think Andrew told me that when you ask, you do this survey saying who do you most trust of the European partners, it is a German will say a Frenchman and a Frenchman will say a German.
But no, I'm not sure we have done that on a larger scale because it was much more difficult.
Yeah.
But now I saw some people wrote about it. So it gives me hope that at one point this great union will slowly find deep links between together, and not only economic.
No, it is not enough. You're saying purely the economic is not enough.
So when you go to these countries like Poland and you listen to people, we knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
Most of us don't know that Poland has been gained her independence in 1918, but so is Romania. But we don't realize that these years of being occupied, does still weight in the minds of the people.
Yeah.
More than we think.
Yes, but because we have no time to listen.
So this is a little where I am today. I'm continue to go to Strasbourg, and I have hope that the turmoil of today will help to grow a new kind of European Union.
Yeah.
And some MEPs making some, but I trust that a lot will go through the European Parliament. Brussels is a nice place with big buildings, doing a tremendous job. I take off my hat.
Yeah.
And the civil servants of the European Union is amazing. And one day the Parliament was, it was in Delors' time, MEPs criticized the work of the Commission. So at the end, Delors said, well, if you don't want me anymore, I go away tomorrow. I let you know one thing, is that these people who work for me are dedicated. And if I said to them, a Saturday afternoon, I need this for Monday morning, I will have it. It was the end of discussion.
Yeah. So it is, yes, the breakdown of trust and goodwill, well, good faith we call it, don't we now? It's having a good faith between departments. And well, you certainly humanized the European Union in my own mind, because of course we don't get to meet the Euro MPs, or we are like, as you say, in France, there is cynicism about the bureaucracy. One of the things Schumann said in that recording I was telling you about, he is in Co for, I think, 2 days.
Even 24 hours, yeah.
Yeah, and he says in politics, I've been in politics 30 years, he says, and you grow cynical. He says, but having been here and seen the spirit of this place, he says, my heart has changed, and I go a different man, I think is what he said. Go home.
He said, I shall never give up.
Yeah.
But you see, he's an interesting fellow, this Schumann. When we speak of the Coal and Steel Treaty, as we worked with Fabrice on this little booklet, I realized that if Schumann hasn't said, I'm for it, this plan would have stayed in the door.
Yes, he's the only one who can.
And he took the courage to say, okay, after having studied this plan during a weekend in Chazadel, in his office in Vichy, he said, I'll take it. He was a political authority to say yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this marvelous plan of coal and steel might have stayed in Monet's office.
He says to Bookman at a meeting, I think in Paris, at Bouquet's house, he says, I know what I must do, but I'm afraid. I would like to retire to a monastery and write up all I have learned. And I think it is Bookman who says, listen, Monsieur Schumann, I think under God you should carry on.
Yes, one
Yes,
thing I
go.
have to say. There was a day talk about Britain, and I saw Queen Victoria in front of a world map, and it showed all the parts of the world Britain used to control.
Yes.
And I said to myself, you cannot ask to a people who has controlled
Yes.
3/4 of the world to just satisfy themselves with Europe. This is why that Europe has to have a bigger outcome, bigger aim to be to absorb, not to absorb, but to make Britain feel at home. And I was struck by this picture, little Queen Victoria.
Yeah, yeah. The little queen who ruled something, how many the biggest empire ever in the world.
Yeah, and but I said, well, of course, we understood that in the minds of the people of the same way for the Poles who have been 200 years under domination. Can we understand that it's not 20 years we should heal, or even 50 years?
Yeah,
It takes much more.
a long time. Yes, I think Schumann said it would be perhaps if it happened for Britain by the force of events and the loss of the empire. It is a difficult history to grapple with, and also the British people, how different they are. They are, like the Russians. They are slightly on the outside. We are an island. And now we are leaving. I mean, we are still part of Europe, but how we shall now learn to negotiate with our European partners is an interesting. It must be a very difficult period for us. But it is what I've seen as I've travelled and spoken to Germans, French, Italians. Is a lot of goodwill. We spoke to Monsieur le Président Ferrand of the National Assembly.
What did he say?
I will play you the recording, and you can tell me, because my French. I have been so busy, I have not even listened to the recording. But we had 1 minute. I said, please, Monsieur, give us a message for the British people, and I think. And I had a picture of Schumann, and so he spoke about Schumann and I think some solidarity. But maybe we're just about to leave, and Charles fired up again, and we're talking about missed opportunities within Europe. Just capture up. You had some interesting conversations.
I had an interesting conversation with one of the co-president of the Lomé Convention, Planetary, and this man said to me, Charles, I'm worried about the future. It was just after the fall of the war.
Yeah.
We have to look after the East-West situation, the North-South dialogue, and world trade. Can the European people face these challenges at the same time?
This is during the Berlin Wall, just after the.
It was after the opening up of the wall. It was 2-3 years afterwards. And it is true that, to my point of view, in Europe, we had the tool to develop the North-South dialogue and economic links, because I think in the dreams of those who founded the Lomé Convention, there was the CECA, the Coal and Steel Treaty. And I think some of them wanted to take this Coal and Steel Treaty from a European project onto a North-South project. But I'm afraid, as far as I know, where our trade tariffs, anyway, were not in agreement with the world economic standards. And we had to stop applying this kind of agreements to enter the world. And of course, I'm sure that we miss a chance to continue and to restore, because one day I had an American farmer in the European Parliament, and he was against the Lomé Convention. And I said, you know that those who created the Lomé Convention, it was a way to heal the mistakes of the colonial time. Oh no, I don't need that. Yes, and this was the mind of some of the people I knew at the time, in Belgium and so on. They wanted to see how can we heal the past. And they offered this North-South plan, but I'm afraid it was not it was not understood or not well applied. I do not know what happened. Maybe we missed some leaders.
Yes. And now, talking about these missed opportunities, and we are called to live in 2018, and it seems to us that the pressures are increasing. How, with your longer view of the European project, could you bring any thoughts about now the rise of populism? How you, I mean, you still go to Strasbourg. What's your kind of feeling?
I feel a very little man in front of these big questions.
Yeah,
I must say. I found some of them behind my mind. And I do feel that the secret remains in what we have been trying to do is to create trust between people.
And this is the work of IOC.
This is one of the work of IOC, and other bodies also try to do it.
It looks like a very small thing compared to the big power, and yet it has seemed to have played in history this vital role, like an unseen soft power which has created so much good.
Yes, IOC remains a very interesting work, but people do their work where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I was called to follow up the European Parliament. The people of the European Parliament built trust with them,
mm-hmm.
but I don't see how I can influence the European policy.
No.
At the same time, I do feel that we could do something. I said to my friend the other day that for the European elections, should our little team here write a letter to all the head of political parties in France who are candidates, so and so, to express our thoughts. I don't know it goes very far, but at least we are there.
Yes, doing so.
I think we need people to be present. We don't make much noise, but deep changes don't come through noise.
Exactly. And if you were to give a message to my generation or the generations to come, because we do not know who will see this. Let's talk about British people, for example. Now we are leaving the Union. There is still great work to do. You gave your life more than 50 years ago to work for peace, and did you feel fulfilled in your calling, that it, for you and your wife, did you achieve or what you hoped, or and then how would you then challenge someone like my sons here to go forward?
Well, I said in Cour this summer at the end of a week with many young Europeans, I think it's important tenacity. Tenacity. If you have a certain calling to do something,
yes, you
may not change the world tomorrow, but you have to be faithful to the calling you had. The result in it is not in my head. I have a feeling that I have not succeeded on my dream of my young time. World in peace. I have not succeeded in that. Because the situation is worse than it was 50 years ago.
Yes.
But I think I've been faithful to what I was called to do.
Yes.
Trying to be faithful to people. The result, it's not in my own hand.
Yes,
but I've been faithful to, and I do believe that this is a responsibility, but it is to be faithful, and even though things don't go the way we hope, to be faithful to your calling.
Yes.
And then things happen.
I like what you said about Gasperi to his wife when they were engaged. He says, I cannot promise you wealth, but I can promise you that you will... Honesty.
To be honest.
Yeah. We sat yesterday at the grave of Gauleiter Berkel, the man who had all the power and had sent 50,000 Jews. To die with this on your conscience is a terrible thing, but I think this honesty, this true path, this path of peace that you have worked for
I don't know if I work for peace, but at least
there's plenty to do. I remember William Wilberforce. He worked for how many 40 years? Like within 2 days or 2 or 3 days of his death, the news comes through, the abolition of slavery. So
there are many examples of people who have achieved something because they were faithful to their calling.
Yeah.
Although at the beginning it wasn't so.
Yeah.
I do not know myself if I have worked to improve world peace. I have no idea. It is not my problem. My problem is that I've done what I should be doing at my own level.
Yeah, yeah. And that is how it
and
is.
don't try to do it with other people.
Yeah.
And now I haven't got the energy I used to have some 50 years ago. So I have to take life as it comes.
Yeah.
But I realized in course this summer with the young Europeans, what struck me was faithfulness.
Yeah.
I think this is what we need. We can go from one thing to another.
Yeah, yeah.
But be faithful to the deeper things in yourself is our real challenge.
Yeah.
Where it leads, we don't know.
Yeah. There is a Hebrew word for this word. It is chesed, C-H-E-S. It's this. It is a word for love.
Yeah.
Loving kindness, sometimes the Bible calls it, but also this faithfulness. It is to stick, like the marriage vow.
And this summer, my concern was, we speak of God's love.
Yeah.
That He loves everybody.
Yeah.
I said to myself, so in that case, God must love Hitler and Putin.
Yeah.
What does it mean for me?
Yeah, yeah. The challenge.
That we judge people and from that on we decide how to
Yeah, yeah.
But I had this summer, I thought about it, I said, no, what does it mean really? I don't know yet fully answer.
Yeah. It is not for the head, it is for
yeah.
the heart. I think when Bookman first goes to Co, he says, you know, where are the Germans? Do you think you can build Europe without the Germans?
But he was in the tendency of many people across Europe from before the Second World War who realized the mistake of the 1919 peace treaty and said, well, the next time we have to treat the Germans as equal. But this idea, if you get my little book here, was expressed in 1942 in America. In many places, there was a sense that what felt was that was a missing factor to do it together. And I think Bookman put his finger on it, mobilized energies which had to do it. I think it was his merit. It's an amazing story, I must say.
Yes.
I'm always amazed by what Bookman arrived in Switzerland.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
But I think it is so. It was in the minds of many, many people across Europe.
Yeah.
But I think Schuman mobilized the people to do it, and not only the statesmen. And it's a difference.
Yeah. To lead
Europe came from the down up, not from up down.
Yeah.
Let us not forget it.
This is amazing.
Because if the French did not accept it to make the Germans in Co and talk together, nothing will happen.
Yeah. That's right.
I think we don't evaluate enough that there was a lot of sacrifices behind the Europe of today. It was not lost life, but it was lost pride. It was, my mother-in-law, she had to give up her pride, her hatred.
Yes.
Myself, I had also to go through a certain personal revolution. With the Germans, I cannot say that I did not like the Germans, but I was indifferent.
Which is, yes, it's the same.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
It was.
And one day I had to translate 2 German couples in Brussels for an evening. I had to translate the opening of the evening for them. And I arrived in Marseille, never met these people, and I had to translate for them into French. And at the end of this translation, I saw a friend of mine, a lady, who spoke very well German. And I had to greet her, and I said, she's going to give me hell. He said, Charles was marvelous. I do not know what I said today, but I know that evening, my indifference towards Germany left my heart. And Germany came into my heart as a part of myself, as part of my family's job. And I think we need to be honest. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
It goes through our own experiences, if we accept it. So I left Marseille very happy and I went back home feeling German.
Well, it's sorry. No, this has been good. So thank you so much. I don't think we should keep you anymore. So the message is, I'm thinking of young people in Britain. I mean, everyone in Britain loves Europe in a way, than their European partners, but we're leaving the Union. But there's still work to do to build bridges. It can be at home. You have gone to Britain to talk to the dockers, the unions. So there is always work, and people can get in touch to get trained by initiatives of change. That might be a good place for people to start if they're thinking along these lines. Yeah. It is difficult. It is to listen to people and with a free mind, not a kind of preconceived idea. Yeah. And some years ago, we had some farmers who went to Poland, invited by one of the movement of freedom in Poland. And he said, and a friend of mine from France said, what can we do for Poland? Can we send some wheat or some grains? He said, come and see who we are. So we arrived, 15 of us from different countries of Europe. He had rented a bus for us, and we crossed Poland from Warsaw down to the southwest to near the Ukrainian border. And we applied this, that to just listen. I tried to answer, that to appreciate what people tell you. And I must say, we learned a lot about Poland at that time. And I think we need to discuss, but we need also to listen to each other and accept. Not try to win our conversation, but accept there are differences. It's part of life. So we created very good links of trust with the Polish farmers and we met. We did not try to say, well, this is how good we are, because they were much better than we were, to a certain extent. And then this group of farmers we met in Poland came to Lorraine, invited by the leaders of the farming community in the region. And we set up a program to visit things. At the end of the program, I stopped in Strasbourg to have a meal at the European Parliament, which I had arranged. And I asked one of the participants, what do you feel about your stay in Lorraine? We said, no, technically speaking, we're as good as you are. But for the first time, we've been treated as human beings. That sticks to my mind, because it was what happened. We received from a meal by these people. I never thought of that. But I said, if the only thing I was able to do was to give this man it. It is worth it. And it is worth it. I cannot do more. But it's important to accept. So, sorry, I speak too much. Charles, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a great privilege to be here. This last 20 minutes has been shot by hand. Sorry, Thomas, we should have put it on a mic. Good lad. You've been working hard. Thank you. I do like the green. Could have put it.
If you enjoyed this episode, then please show your appreciation with a comment and perhaps even subscribing to the channel. If you have questions, drop them below. And if you want to go deeper into the subject, then please check out the Saving Europe book and the other videos on the channel, especially the Book Distillery podcast, where me and my blue-collar scholar friends go deeper into these very subjects with top academic guests from around the world. So until next time, thanks for watching.